What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to VeVe Investments. On today's episode, we're talking about mixed reality applications. So if you guys are interested in finding out what 14 applications are for the VeVeVerse, make sure to stay tuned. We discuss it all in this episode. Alright, so we made a video talking about AR applications for the VeVeVerse. Think of this as a part 2, but instead of talking about just AR, I thought we'd include both. Now, I did also see that VeVe dropped their community update via Twitter. They have yet to release their video, so I'm hoping to be able to recap that for Thursday's episode. So with that being said, let's kick this week off with some MR applications. Alright, so first off, for those who don't know what I mean when I say mixed reality, it's exactly what Apple just unveiled with their Vision Pro headset. It's a mix between VR and AR. So the first application we're discussing today is going to be anchoring collectibles. So this feature would allow users to log their collectible or their comic in a specific place in their physical environment. So whenever you put on an AR headset and you walk around that physical location, you can see that collectible or comic exactly where you left it. So maybe you have some empty wall space, maybe you have a corner of your room that doesn't have too much furniture. You can place a collectible or a comic there, and now they'd be immersed in your physical environment. We've talked about this briefly in the past. This does open great opportunities for renting. And the example that I've used in the past is a kid's birthday party, right? So, a bunch of 10, 12-year-old kids, parents renting out a group of the Marvel Mighties, anchoring those collectibles in the room, and then the kids would be able to run around and interact and immerse themselves with the characters. I do also see this as a feature that could potentially turn a lot of people into collectors, right? If you're somebody who's never collected before, but you want to try it out, or even if you don't have the intention of buying something on the app, but you want to rent it out for an event, and then next thing you know, you're enjoying it to the point where you actually go and buy the piece. And then that one piece turns into 5, and then the 5 turns into 10, and it's happened to so many people on the platform by now. Another application here is going to be team builds. So this is something that I actually have the intention of doing on the channel in the future. So people can collaborate on group projects. We've seen this in cavernous videos, how you can build together. But the team has also confirmed that you're going to have the ability to toggle on and off who has access to your home, as well as who has the ability to build in your space as well. So I'm not going to tell you exactly how you'll qualify to be in these groups just yet, but my intention is to introduce a series where me and a team of other people come up with a specific project idea, and then we film the start to finish process for an episode in terms of us planning the project and then executing it. Maybe it's us building a house, maybe it's us decorating a vault, maybe it's us coming up with a specific room idea like the videos we've done in the past. Whatever it is, I think it would be a really cool series to introduce. And like I said before, there is going to be a specific way for you to qualify so that you can be on the building team. So another application for these headsets is going to be remote telepresence. So users can virtually inhabit a robot or a drone in a different location to avoid them from having to physically visit that location. So my father actually works in a specialized role. He's an electrician who there's only about 3 to 4 people who handles the equipment that he works on over in the maritime provinces. So something like this would actually be perfect for the work that he does, because instead of him having to hop on a flight and fly over to those provinces, he can toss on a headset and he can actually advise somebody on how to work on that equipment from a remote location. So it saves him time, but also the company money. So something like this can be used for tasks like remote inspections, repairs, or even exploration of hazardous environments. And I know some people might be thinking, like, what does this have to do with the VeVeVerse? Well, first, businesses are going to be replicated on a 1-to-1 scale in the digital landscape. So companies right now that have rooms of people operating equipment remotely can and likely will replicate those operations in a digital environment. The second point I'll bring up here, and I won't get into it too much because we do discuss it later on in the episode, but we've seen ROV models being taken apart and reconstructed in cavernous videos. So building environments in the VeVeVerse that allow people to do that is another application that relates to this point. Next up, we got virtual prototyping and product design. So users can visualize and manipulate virtual prototypes, test their functionality, and then make real-time adjustments. As a result, it would speed up the design and iteration process, but also reduce costs for the designer or company. Now, this is also going to relate to another point discussed in this episode, and that's going to be 3D modeling. But when it comes to design processes like this, Using a mixed reality headset makes these experiences way more immersive, but also, and I can't stress this enough, way easier for beginners to learn. Next on the list, we got virtual fashion. So users can visualize and customize virtual garments, experiment with different fabrics and patterns, and then even virtually try on outfits. So going back to what I just mentioned about how these headsets are going to make it easier for beginners to learn, I can speak from experience when I say that learning platforms like Blender, you need to learn, a bunch of different features, and there's even a large difference, and I'm talking from a difficulty standpoint, between somebody who uses a tablet to model stuff versus somebody who uses a mouse with their computer. Using a mouse is way harder. So the point that I'm trying to get at here is picking up your remote with your headset and then just drawing. It's such a natural thing. And yes, you might not be good at it right away, but it's not like you need to learn a bunch of little features of how to navigate around the platform and then, oh, let's go up to filter and then turn on Gaussian blur and then reduce transparency down to, I'm sure you can probably still all do that, but the level of immersion that a headset like this will bring will make learning so much easier. And I've mentioned before, when you make things fun, it becomes easier to learn as well. And when you're so immersed in walking around your actual creation and things like that, it's absolutely more fun. I've never even done it myself, but I know for a fact that's true. So just like fashion, we got music creation. You can replicate exactly what you do in a physical space with music in the digital landscape. Users can manipulate virtual instruments, collaborate with other musicians in real time, and even perform in virtual concerts. The concerts is nothing new. This has been happening for years now. But I actually have a neighbor who he has created a music studio in his house. And in one of the closets in his room, he has lined the wall, ceiling, floor with these foam panels. And then he has a microphone set up and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, hang on a sec. That's sweet, right? But I don't need to spend any of the money to do that. I can just replicate that exact design in a virtual landscape. I could be sitting in my room, an open room, yet wearing a headset and standing in a studio. I could have all my DJ equipment in front of me. I could have surround sound speakers because I'd be wearing my headset, but you could also just set it up so you have speakers everywhere. If you really want to take it next level, you could set up cameras to record your recording process. Now we're getting a little deep with it, but again, it would offer a unique and immersive experience for anyone creating music. And I'm sure that's probably an important part of the process, right? You want to feel inspired. So I personally have never really been involved in the music industry, but I do know that it takes money to rent these studios out. So if you don't have the money to do that, you can just build one in a digital environment. Next up, virtual data visualization. So we've seen this in the cavernous videos as well. Users can explore complex data sets in 3D spaces, manipulate visual representations, and then gain a deeper insight through interactive data displays. So think New York City, right? You got Wall Street. How many hedge funds have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to set up these huge stock rooms so that people can watch everything live? Now you, as a single individual, not a hedge fund, a single individual, can replicate that in a digital environment. You can build a stock room. You can build a weather map. You can build network charts. And all of that just makes me think of different careers, right? Like maybe you even want to be a weather person and you have no experience standing in front of a weather map. Build one and practice, right? We've mentioned immersion multiple times in this video. Something like this, again, way more immersive. I don't have to scroll over to the app on my phone every single time I want to open and check the Omi price. I can just have a live feed displayed in whatever room I'm sitting in. Next up, we got meetings and collaboration. So maybe a bit of an obvious one here. I did mention in the interview with Dino that there was actually a lady in my area who, and there was a whole news article written on this, but she sat down for an appointment that she had at her local salon, and she tossed on a VR headset. And in the middle of her appointment, while she was in the chair, she met with an executive in her company from Germany, and they met in a virtual environment that was built to replicate their California office. I respect that woman a lot because the looks that she was probably getting while wearing that headset would have been funny, but soon enough, that's going to be a social norm. Next up, we got gaming in AR. So interacting with things like our Marvel Mighties, for example, We keep talking about this series because I think they're a fantastic series that they can do so much with. Now, we do also have a percentage of the community that's starting to adopt this whole crypto toys project. Now, I personally don't have any. I've looked into it a little bit. I'm not going to give my opinion here, but they have promoted an upcoming feature that's going to allow you to walk your toy around in AR. It actually looks like the exact same system that you use in your vault. I swear this stuff's built in Unity. Think about things like being able to toss on a headset and then seeing your Marvel Mighties running around on your floor. Maybe you have some objective-based games. You can earn MCP points, maybe some bronze tickets. Maybe we can create like a little racetrack with our DeLorean or Lamborghini in AR and drive that around the little racetrack. That'd be cool. But because we already have things like the drivability feature on VeVe, which for those who didn't know has been around for quite a while now. It was actually around when the DeLorean originally dropped and they ended up turning the feature off. But because they have those things in the works and they've been in the works for a little bit now, I'm confident in saying that they probably have other features in the pipeline that are going to allow us to interact with our collectibles or comics in certain ways in AR. So when Apple unveiled their Vision Pro, it got me thinking a lot more about live experiences. So think of the cost of a courtside ticket for a basketball game. Thousands of dollars, easily, right? Now think about sitting at home, tossing on a mixed reality headset, and sitting courtside at that game for a fraction of the price. Now, I've talked about my idea for collectible or comic premieres in the VeVeVerse for big drops. Think about tossing that headset on and being front and center at that premiere, or maybe your first row at a virtual VeVe convention. So mixed reality headsets like the Vision Pro are going to allow you to experience things in a digital landscape at a fraction of the price that you would have to pay in the physical world. So the virtual conventions and then the collectible and comic premieres, those are just two examples. But, you can obviously use this for so many different things. Concerts that we previously mentioned would be another one. But what are some other experiences that you guys would want to see in the VeVeVerse that maybe you would want to use these headsets for? Maybe scavenger hunts? Next up, we talked about museum tours with AR Lupa, and museums are something I largely expect to see in the VeVeVerse. So maybe we can toss on one of these headsets and we can tour a brand-specific museum and then learn more about that brand's characters and history. You can use AR to augment details or narrations into artworks to explain the piece to the viewer. So again, something we saw with AR Lupa. And on that app, we also saw that you had the ability to augment portals directly in your room. So maybe we can do something similar in the VeVeVerse where we can augment a museum tour into our room. We step into it, and then it walks us from piece to piece. Next up, we have 3D modeling and art studios. So this is something I'm probably the most excited for in the VeVeVerse, is being able to walk around and sculpt something as if you're physically doing it. So as I mentioned before, modeling in the first person is going to make it much, much easier for beginners to learn. You can also take entire art studios and replicate them in a digital space. So I can't believe I haven't brought this up before in the past, because we talked about different room ideas and how you can open a door to a certain location. I want to have a room that's all white. White walls, white ceiling, white floor, and then I can just paint, draw, graffiti, anywhere. I feel like that would be so fun, just having a entire room as a giant canvas. Next up, we're gonna have virtual training. So similar to what I was talking about before with operating equipment remotely, these headsets would provide live feeds that would allow trainers to advise the user on specific tasks as they're being performed. So you may have an environment inside the VeVeVerse where your student is taking apart and reconstructing a car engine, and then they get stuck on a specific part. That trainer can now advise from a remote location how the student can get past that step. And last but not least, this is a bit of a general point, but something I do want to bring up, and it's the exact reason why I want to replicate what I'm doing in the physical world right now in the VeVeVerse and help businesses transition into the digital landscape. Many companies, many companies across all different types of industries are going to transition into the metaverse, or quote unquote metaverse, and they're going to replicate their business models in virtual environments. So for example, a real estate brokerage can have their clients explore 3D models of homes, apartments, or commercial spaces allowing them to visualize and experience the properties before making physical visits. That's more efficient for the buyer, but also for the seller. The seller doesn't have to spend all this time booking appointments and taking into account, oh, I got to drive 30 minutes there for an appointment, and then I got to take into account traffic on the way back and this and that, right? And then speaking of time spent doing that, it also costs the realtor money. So it would also be more cost effective for them. We've also seen an example with Audi and Cavernous. So a car dealership can have their customers view cars in 3D instead of having to walk them around to each one of them. And I can relate to this personally as well, because for those who don't know, I've been in the car industry before. I've worked as a sales and marketing manager for a couple stores. So just thinking from the dealership's perspective, inventory would be way easier to manage with something like this, because, you know, when I was working at Nissan, just on the Nissan side alone, because I was also managing an Infinity store across the street, the Nissan dealer had 120 to 130 cars at any time in the department on the lot. On the Infinity side, it was about 80 to 95. So having to keep track of where each and every single vehicle is on the lot, but then also making sure that each and every car is in a position that's available. That's key, because I can't tell you how many times I have seen customers walk into a dealership looking to test drive a specific car, and then that car was parked in the back corner. It was one of my, it makes me cringe right now thinking about it, but it was one of my biggest pet peeves when I was in the industry. It made no sense to me. It's like, guys, you have customers coming to your dealership to buy vehicles that they can't even get to. How does that make sense? So that would just be an example of a situation that was poorly managed at the time. But for a dealer that's operating properly, right, this would still be extremely helpful. It would be more efficient in terms of finding vehicles on the lot. It would be more efficient in terms of being able to show people vehicles. It would be less of a liability for the dealer, because I've also seen instances where people get into a car and accidentally scratch the leather or spill a drink. And from a customer standpoint, when I say spill a drink, people might raise an eyebrow and go, well, dude, like, you know, that doesn't ruin the car. Sure, but the car now has to go through service, right? Service is going to clean that car up, and it costs the dealership money. So everyday businesses, car dealerships, real estate brokerages, contractors, right? Whether it's specialized contractors or just general contractors, there's a lot of stuff that's transferable for their industry. There will be applications for all of these types of businesses in an environment like the VeVeVerse. Ladies and gents, that's going to conclude today's episode. Those are 14 different applications for mixed reality headsets in the VeVeVerse. I hope you enjoyed. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I do hope that the team gets out that video for the community update. And if they do happen to get it out between now and Thursday, I'll be reviewing that. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.